Today, you really are in for a treat. My guest is Dr. Elia Gourgouris, and Dr. Elia is a doctor of psychology. He is the author of a book on happiness, the co-author, 7 Keys to Navigating a Crisis. And Dr. Elia, it is a pleasure to have you with me today on a day where there's so much tension going on in this country right now.
Nadia, first of all, the pleasure is mine. So thank you for having me on your show.
Oh, no, I have to say, I have been wanting to do this interview for a long time because you have so much wisdom and advice and guidance as to how to navigate stress and how to navigate complexity. And right now, not only are we dealing with COVID-19, but we also have this extraordinarily political crisis or stress or anxiety going on as we wait for the outcome of this election. So what advice and guidance do you say to people who are watching this going, I cannot wait for this to be over and it is impacting my inner world?
A great question. First of all, fear and uncertainty, depression, sadness, loneliness, anxiety, and stress is sweeping the world. The world is right now is facing, I would say, at least four simultaneous crises. Obviously, COVID-19. We have the mental health crisis where depression, anxiety, and stress is up an astonishing 1,000%. According to the UN, over 1 billion people, that's what they be, suffer from that. And I think that's underreported because that basically implies that only 1 out of 7 people is depressed, anxious, or stressed. That can't possibly be the case. I think it's more like 6 out of 7 are that way. Then you have the economic and financial crisis, right, of hundreds of millions of people unemployed, underemployed, and billions feeling financially insecure. Basically, how will I support myself and my family in the next few months? And then you have, of course, what you talked about just now, the social, racial, and now political crisis sweeping. So we're, as human beings, we're very resilient. We can handle 1 or 2 crises. We can't handle 4 or 5 at the same time with no end in sight. And that kind of uncertainty is what's keeping people very, very stressed right now.
So, I mean, you as a psychologist, somebody who works with both individuals and organizations to navigate change and stress, one of the things I know you speak about is that human beings don't like change. We perceive it as danger. So how do you help people start seeing change or difficulty differently?
Okay, there's a big difference between danger and fear. Danger is real. If somebody coughs in our face without wearing a mask, we are in danger. That's a fact. That's not a political statement. That's a medical fact. Fear, on the other hand, is not your friend. You don't want to make decisions, either personal, professional, or organizational, based on fear, because the results are not going to be very pleasant. So let's separate, what's danger versus fear. And, I'm an optimist by nature. I believe that, yes, humanity is taking a beating right now. I mean, we're in, the numbers are getting worse day by day. We're breaking records on a daily basis.
You're talking about the COVID numbers, right?
Yeah. Yes. Just yesterday, over 100,000 just here in the United States. There's lockdowns in pretty much every major country in Europe as we speak. So, and I never watched Game of Thrones, but I do know there's a phrase from it, winter is coming. And that's not good, I think. So I think we're in for
it's winter here.
Yes, another 6 months of a tough go. So we don't like uncertainty. We're creatures of habit. We like our comfort zone. That's why it's called a comfort zone. However, think about this. No growth ever took place within the comfort zone. Right. If you want to grow as a human being or as an organization, you must step outside of your comfort zone. And this is what these crises are pushing us, reluctantly, I would say, beyond our comfort zone. In the end, it's a good thing.
So people, who are joining us right now, and if you are or have just joined us, I'm talking to Dr. Elia Gourgouris, who is an author. He is a renowned expert in the area of happiness and dealing with stress and dealing with change. And whoever is joining us right now going, that's all very well, but what are some practical ways, Elia, that right now I'm a manager, I'm in an organization, I'm feeling insecure. I don't know if we're going back to work, if we're not going back to work, and I'm just feeling anxious, I'm feeling depressed. What are some concrete things that as an individual we can do?
You know what's interesting? I work a lot with HR executives, and this comes from thousands of organizations. Their top biggest organizational challenges right now, you know what number one is? Ensuring the mental and physical well-being of our employees. Now, in the past, I wouldn't even make the top 10, but that's number one right now. And number two, of course, is maintaining employee morale, productivity, and effectiveness, and engagement.
Because as you say, if people are unhappy and they are depressed, they're not productive.
Right. You can't get number two until you get number one. So we have to shift. So what I share with the HR executives and anybody who's a leader who's managing people, since most of these conversations, by the way, are happening like you and I now, they're not happening in real life.
No.
Don't ask somebody that works for you or with you, how are you doing? Lean into the camera and say, the door's closed. How are you really doing?
Oh, that's beautiful.
How's your family? How are your kids? Is there anything that I can do or our organization can do to make your life better? You must make them feel cared for and supported before you ask them to be productive and to work for 14 hours a day to meet the numbers.
Humanity is a nugget. That is an absolute nugget. It sounds so obvious. So what you've just said is anybody, even with a colleague, with a direct report, with a manager, by the way, my door is closed right now. I just want to check in with you. How are you doing? Make it sincere, make it authentic, and make the person. And how many people have done that in the last week? I think that's so important.
Because most of us say, how are you doing? And everybody's like, I'm fine. And the truth is, no, you're not fine. I know it. You know it. Everybody knows it. So let's get real. And even as a leader, be vulnerable and be more open and more transparent. I would say, you know what? I've been struggling too. You're not in this alone. We're all struggling.
Mm-hmm.
You know, my spouse or my kids, this is hard. But if we can unite and to teach them self-care. So, and I work a lot with the healthcare industry. So I have a program called Self-Care for Healthcare.
Oh, that's nice.
Well, but think about this. For the people on the front lines, the doctors, the nurses, the hospital administrators, I'm doing this in India now, believe it or not.
Mm-hmm.
Self-care for healthcare. You can't take care of somebody else if you don't know how to take care of yourself. And in the 7 keys to navigating a crisis, I created what I call basically a personal health assessment that looks very specifically at your physical, your mental, your emotional, and your spiritual health. And this is something that people can take. It takes 2 minutes, and it's your own personal assessment. Where are you doing well? Because there might be some areas you're actually doing pretty good, but where are you really struggling? And those numbers don't lie. It's kind of on a scale of 1 through 5. 5 is excellent. 1 is like, I'm terrible at it. Well, if you get scores 4 and 5 in some of these questions, you're doing great. 3s are pretty normal, by the way. But if you score 1 or a 2, take a red pen and circle that and say, I need to invest some time in improving those areas because those are directly impacting my personal happiness.
So let's go through what those are again. And I think those are very important because work could be okay, but are you exercising? So again, just if you can take us through a little bit of that checklist. And by the way, 7 Keys to Navigating a Crisis is your book. I know it is available on Amazon.
Let's do the physical health for starters. 5 questions, really. How's your energy throughout the day? I mean, if your energy goes up and down or you're always tired, that's indicative of something, right? Stress. Right. When you wake up in the morning, are you rested? Do you know we have an epidemic basically of people sleep deprivation or disrupted sleep? So how are you feeling first thing when you get out of the morning? Is it like, I can't wait to conquer the day, or, oh no, another day? I mean, what is your reaction to that? Is your diet healthier than it used to be? Here's the reason why. Because of our stress level has gone up exponentially, I would say, we can't continue to do things the same way we used to do before the pandemic and expect similar results. On a very personal note, I used to walk 3 times a week for an hour, 3 miles, because I got gray hair and I'm getting older and I needed to move. And I had to do it. Starting in April, when things really got out of control, I made a conscious and mindful decision to walk every single day, 7 days a week for a mile. And you know what? Now it's become a habit. And now I do it because I want to do it, not because I have to do it. There's something beautiful about being outside in nature. Blue skies, the sun is out. You know what happens when you get sunlight? And I don't often take my phone with me. I used to always be on the phone talking to clients, even when I'm walking. No, I've put it down and I'm mindful, aware, listen to whatever messages I need to
get. So you say something even small, like I'm walking more than I ever did. Famously, you make your habits make you. So, and has that increased your energy incrementally?
Not only has it increased my energy, I think it has helped reduce my stress, reduce my anxiety. And, there are chemicals released in our brains when we move around. So I would highly recommend people, if you're feeling down, get out of your apartment, get out of your house and go for a walk. I'm not talking about becoming a triathlete and running marathons. I'm talking about movement and being outside. Listen to the birds, breathe in the air, and concentrate and think mindfully, how do I want the rest of my day to go?
And this is hardly revelatory. I mean, nothing you're saying we haven't heard of, but I always say the genius of you is the ability to help organizations go from what people know they should be doing and to apply it. As the world of professional development, I say, what do? We take BLOs. BLOs are blinding lights of the obvious. But do we apply them? And that's really, how do we help people shift? So you're joining us today. I'm talking to Dr. Elia Gourgouris, who is a happiness expert. He has a doctorate in psychology. He helps people and organizations get mentally, physically healthier and overcome stress and change. And you're saying on a microscopic level, start with yourself, start with how you felt this morning. Now, there are people who are joining us who are going, that's all very well for you to say, Dr. Elia, who has a best-selling book and who is going to Greece for half the year. What about me? What do we say to those people, the critics and the skeptics who are going, it's all very well for the two of you?
I say this, that knowledge without application is just education. You can read the top 10 books on how to be happy and highlight them and underline them to death. Usually, what do we do with those books? We put them back on the bookshelf, never to be read again. So now I'm more educated. I know more about happiness and wellness. But if I don't apply its principles, I think I'm actually going to be even more frustrated. But my happiness level is not going to change. What matters in life, if this is the biggest takeaway, is this: it doesn't matter what you know in life. What matters is, what do you do with what you know?
Oh, yes.
What do you do with what you know? Whether it's mentally, physically, emotionally, or spiritually. I look at this personal assessment, Nadia, seriously, I have it in front of me. I know it's in my book, and I go through this list every single day.
To yourself.
To myself. That's part of my self-care. And people have said, well, isn't that kind of selfish? I'm like, no, I can't take care of my family, my clients, and the world if my batteries are not full.
Right.
So not only is it not selfish, it's necessary now more than ever before, because the stress levels we're experiencing are unprecedented.
And then, what's interesting for you as a psychologist, as a thought leader, you are going through what a lot of your clients are going through, and that's unprecedented.
Yeah, but you know what? That's why I have to walk the talk. Like, I can't just talk about that and then as soon as we're off the air, I'm depressed. And I'm like, no, I got to work. It takes work to take care of yourself. And
yes.
So I'm asking people to be mindful of your day. Don't let the day go by. Think about, what do you want your day to be like? And think about the 1 or 2 or 3 things you can do, practical and easy to apply, and create those habits. Nadia, if we make a change of 1% today, but we stay consistent for 365 days, guess where we're going to be a year from now?
It's so interesting you're saying that.
1% change.
Right? There's a new book out called Atomic Habits.
Yes.
And, that's the whole idea. What you just said is the consistency. So, and I'm just curious how you, as somebody who motivates others, how do you get people to make that change?
I hold them accountable. Easy. Very easy. Basically, with my clients, I get to know them. I give them the tools, and then they have to do the work, and then I hold them accountable. And that's how we do it. It's an accountability. I'm more of an accountability coach, actually, than an executive coach, really.
Okay. So it's saying, where do you want to be? And then how do we get there? Now, in the 7 keys to navigating a crisis, if you don't mind sharing some of those, and then, of course, sure, whoever wants to know the rest.
Yeah.
Navigating a crisis. Yes.
Self-care is one of them. Then the second key is awareness. Like, listen with that your inner wisdom, your intuition. If you're a spiritual person, maybe connect to the divine. I don't care what you call it, but that voice is very powerful. In my own personal life, every time I've listened to that voice, it's always worked out. But because I'm not a perfect human being, sometimes I've ignored it. Guess what happens when you ignore that voice? You pay a price, Nadia. It's not pleasant. And the other thing I would say is flexibility and adaptability. Now, again, more than ever, I like to use the example of the oak tree and the palm tree. So the oak tree is this massive, huge tree, right? It's been around for 100 years, tall, massive. But in the peak of the storm, if there's enough saturation on the ground and enough wind, guess what happens to oak trees? They come crashing down on cars, people, homes, right? The palm tree, on the other hand, it's fairly thin, right? Tall, but it's flexible. So at the peak of the storm, it bends and bends. Sometimes it bends parallel to the ground at the very peak of the storm. And I'm talking about the storms of life now, not the actual hurricane or a cyclone.
Are you an oak tree or a palm tree?
Exactly. Guess what happens to the palm tree after the storm ends? It raises up again and survives the storm. So I'm asking you to be palm trees and not be oak trees. So people say, well, what's an oak tree in terms of a human being? An oak tree is somebody who says, well, I've been this way for 50 years. I'm not going to change now. This is the way I've done things forever.
Right.
Okay. Not the way to go about right now. We must be adaptable and flexible. And if you think about it, if you think about professional athletes,
right,
basketball players, football players, baseball, soccer players, the peak, before their games, they're out there on the field for half an hour. What are they doing before the game starts? They stretch. Why do these people stretch when they are at the peak physical condition? Is because if they don't stretch, they're going to pull a hamstring or have some other injury. So they're practicing flexibility before they play the big game. We are in the biggest game of which is called life right now, right? And remember that we're all graduates from the University of Adversity. Like we're all.
I like that again. The world, say that slowly.
The world, yes, we're all graduates from the University of Adversity.
We are all graduates from the University of Adversity, yes.
Is that not true? I mean, we're all facing major crises simultaneously. All of us are. So we have to show up differently is what I'm saying.
So for the rest of the practices, it is happiness, 7 keys to navigating a crisis. Now, I know that you were on Greek radio or television this morning talking about the American election.
The night of the elections actually was, the night before, yes. And,
so I'm curious what were some of the questions you were asked? Because, I mean, the reality is Greece has a very tumultuous couple of years.
They have, the questions were, of course, how the impact of a presidency of Joe Biden, would it be different than a Trump presidency specifically towards Greece?
And right? What is your perspective?
And what's really happening in the Aegean with Turkey, because Turkey has been quite belligerent lately. And so my perspective is that although President Trump has strengthened the relationship with Greece, and especially Mike Pompeo has spent a lot of time in Greece and they've strengthened the defense. He's also winked at President Erdogan in Turkey and kind of allowed him to be out of control in some ways. And these are facts. I'm not making political sense.
No, it's just yes.
And he's been involved in Libya, in Syria, now Azerbaijan, and Nagorno-Karabakh, and in the Aegean with Cyprus and so on. So I think that President Biden, if he gets elected, which it seems like he will get elected, will have he won't accommodate that kind of a dictator or, leader of that manner. I think he will set some boundaries. How's that?
I'm just curious, again, the questions that you were asked. The other thing you and I spoke about was the fact that at some point you would like to put together a retreat. You would like to take people to Greece, people who are stressed, dealing with issues, and say, what are some of the Greek practices around dealing with just complexity and difficultiness, and people who want to understand what it takes to just feel more at peace with themselves?
Nadia, there's an island called the island of Ikaria in Greece, which is one of the blue zones where people live to be 100 plus.
What are they doing? What are the secrets?
And nobody ever gets sick. I mean, there's one in Costa Rica and there's one, in Japan too. But this island basically, how do they do it? And here's how they do it. They swim, they spend time outside in the sun, they hike, they walk, they eat the healthiest food, they give themselves permission to take siestas, which is an afternoon nap as needed. But more importantly, they connect with other human beings.
Yes.
They laugh, they dance, they eat, they might drink a little bit of ouzo or some, wine or whatever. But the biggest thing is the connection with relationships. And I will only give you the 7th path. I'm going to keep some paths to
Amazon.com.
But I will give you the last one. The last one is called kindness.
Mm-hmm.
So we start with self-care, but we end with helping other people. And I've gotten pushback. I do podcasts on a weekly basis, 2 or 3 every single week for the last 6 months since the book came out. Crazy. Do you believe it or not? I've gotten pushback about the kindness, and people have said, Elia, I'm drowning. I'm stressed out myself. You want me to help other people? What are you, crazy? What am I, my brother's keeper? These are actual quotes. People have actually said that.
Yes, and
I'm like, no, you're not your brother's keeper. You are your mother's keeper and your sister's keeper. And the homeless person down the street, and somebody in your community, if you're listening to the sound of my voice, believe me, you're better off than somebody else. And there's a direct link and connection between happiness and kindness. Happy people by nature help other people just because their batteries are full. On the flip side, when we perform acts of service or acts of kindness, innately it makes us feel better.
Oh, yes.
So lose yourself in the service of somebody else because there's somebody else that's worse off than you. And remember that we're all brothers and sisters. What happens to somebody in India has a direct impact on me, I believe. And I believe that with all my heart.
Well, I am so excited about joining you in Greece on a happiness, healthy retreat. I think that will be remarkable. And just navigating a complex world, navigating a time in our lives, as you say, is unprecedented. And even having this opportunity to connect right now, I do hope, by the way, I have never met Dr. Elia in person, and I hope I do get to meet you in person. But if one also looks at this COVID-19 period in our lives and say, what happened today that would not have happened? You and I would not be meeting.
Absolutely.
Dr. Elia Gourgouris is in Boulder, Colorado, and I am in Atlanta, Georgia. And we are connecting because the world expanded, and just to be able on a daily basis to look at what is working. So your last bit of advice or guidance to whoever's just joined us, who is just feeling so unsettled right now, that feeling of, and that's what people have kept describing to me this last couple of days, is I just feel the sense of anxiety, the sense of uncertainty. Final, very precious words from the doctor of psychology who is an expert in happiness.
Because of the uncertainty, none of us know we're going to be here next month or next year. I'm talking about on this planet, basically. And this is one of the greatest gifts I believe the pandemic has brought to humanity. So my last parting words are these: do not procrastinate your happiness. Happiness now. Don't wait until when I retire, or when I get the raise, or when I travel again, or when my kids leave the house, or when. Forget the whens. Do it right now. Create habits that are practical and easy to implement. I'm not asking you to transform your life. I'm asking you to make 1 or 2 or 3 habits, new habits, and consistency, of course, is the key, right? And watch where you're going to be in 3 months from now, 6 months from now, or a year from now. It will transform your life. It's doable. Anybody can do it, but it does take work and personal responsibility.
Superb. And I will tell you, my biggest takeaway from the session was for those of you who are interacting with colleagues remotely. I love what you said. If you've just joined us, Dr. Elia said, close the door and say to your colleague, your manager, your direct report, or even your friend, the door is closed. I just want to know, how are you really doing right now? And ask them sincerely and authentically. And then the other thing you said was, be vulnerable and say to the people you work with or the people you interact with, I'm having some challenges too, because a demotivator is not feeling that you are cared about, that you are listened to, and that you are heard. And that bit of practical advice is something I will certainly incorporate into my teaching and training. And thank you for that. Just a reminder to people who have joined us where they can reach you, and again, how they can get the book.
Both books are available on Amazon, and you can reach me on LinkedIn. You know, Dr. Elia Gourgouris, the Happiness Doctor. That's where you can. That's the best place to reach me. So I'm so grateful to you, Nadia. Thank you for having me on your show. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you.
The time has gone by way too fast.
I know. We've been chatting. Let's agree that we'll check in with each other every couple of months, and let's have a toast to inner happiness. That is the one thing we do have control over, or at least a larger part of control than external. To Dr. Elia Gourgouris, thank you so much for your time. Ευχαριστώ.
Παρακαλώ. Thank you, Nadia.